Hi everybody, welcome back to It's a Twin Thing. It's Aspen, the better half of the Summers twins, and Ashley, the best half of the Summers twins. You were going to add something there, but then you didn't know what to say. It occurred to me while I was walking here that we need to specify that we're sisters because I started listening to a new podcast on my way here, and it was called Family Trips or something like that, and it was with these two brothers, and I was probably listening to it for a good 7 to 10 minutes before I realized that they were related. But they were like famous people, so I guess they just assumed that people knew they were related. But then I remembered that we usually start with saying that we're each a half of the Summers twins, so if people can't figure out that we're twins, then they've got other issues. Well, also the podcast is called It's a Twin Thing, so I feel like people would just infer that we are twins. Well, that was my point, is that it was called Family Something, and I didn't infer that they were family. Oh. Well, that sounds like a you problem. Probably. Okay, I'll talk about something. Okay, that was so serious. It's a serious matter. Oh no. Well, actually I have two serious matters to talk about, but I'll start with this one. So, I have this condition that is really unfortunate and just makes my life really hard. Boy. It's called Misophonia. And you may have heard of it if you are up with the science community, or if you have it, or if you listen to Armchair Expert, because they talk about it a lot. But it's this condition. It's real. There's genetic markers for it. So that's how they know that it's a real thing and not just something that people make up. And also, if you have it, you would know that it's real and that you can't control it. But it's this condition where there's these noises that make you angry and anxious and irritate you beyond belief, and you feel like your head is going to explode when you hear them. And sometimes you want to actually punch people in the face. Yes, like actually. Some of the sounds that trigger my misophonia are things that happen all of the time, like chewing and typing, and I cannot even describe it to you. If you don't have it, you'll never understand how miserable it is, but it's just so awful, and no offense, but my roommate types so loud, and I literally have to leave my room all the time because the typing is obnoxious, and it's like an alarm going off. It hurts my ears to listen to. I have this all the time, like I'll be taking a test in class and everyone else is typing their answers and I feel like I'm going to explode, and I think that's the reason that I don't do well on tests anymore, because my misophonia. I kind of think I have it too. I don't think that I'm as crazy bothered by as many sounds as you, because I think almost every sound triggers your misophonia. That is not true. Interrupting triggers my misophonia. I'm just kidding. There's sounds that I just can't even believe how angry they make me, because it's like even myself bothers me so much sometimes. And I feel for the typing thing, because I'm a really loud typer and I try really hard to not be, and I'm sure I drive people crazy, but I can't help it. But chewing and rubbing against things, and when people put their fingers in their mouth and pop, those all make me so crazy. And then lately it's been water bottle sucking, and my water bottle it's so loud. It's been so loud. I don't know what's wrong with it, but every time I drink out of my own water bottle, I want to throw it on the ground and smash it. And there are a lot of people in my life who also sip so loudly on their water bottles, and just makes me want to like pour the water out everywhere. So I feel like I sometimes have it. Yeah. Like I've never really had the desire to be physically violent before, but when I hear loud typing or loud chewing, it's just like I could literally throw somebody out a window. So if you're around me and there's loud misophonia triggering noises, you might want to watch out. Speaking of wanting to be physically violent, Ashley has this issue where she talks with her, not issue, most people talk with their hands. I talk with my hands a lot, but she seems to only do it when I'm sitting right next to her and she puts her elbow up on the chair or whatever she's sitting near, and then she waves her hand right in my face. And I don't know why, but I stand having people's hands in my face, and it honestly makes me want to bite your hands. I'm in like a perverted
way and like I want to bite your fingers off because it just grosses me out. So
It just grosses you out that my hands are in your face?
yeah, because I just feel like you're gonna get them in my mouth and like get your hand germs in my throat, and
I'm not gonna stick my hands in your mouth.
not on purpose, but if I open my mouth to breathe or something and you just like smack my teeth, just like a finger.
Like you're just gonna open your mouth to breathe and I'll be like a vacuum and suck my fingers into
it. It would just be really easy for you to stick them in my mouth on accident.
Okay, well, I'll try to be more cautious.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is going to sound really bad because I understand that there's a lot of safety issues with intimacy in acting and that it's important to have people's consent and have an intimacy coordinator and everything, but sometimes I think it's just a little bit overboard. Like the other day, we were doing a scene, just an improvised scene, and I had an impulse to put my hand on someone's arm, but then I was like, oh, I can't do that. I didn't ask their permission. And then our professor stopped us, and it was an older professor, and they were like, Aspen, I felt like you had an impulse to touch her, but then you didn't, and that made it really awkward. And I was like, I know, but I didn't feel like I was allowed to. And sometimes I just feel like everyone in the class is okay with it. And so there just needs to be, I don't know, some way to work around it where it's like people feel safe, but you can also just touch people without it being an issue. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of funny because I feel like theater people are the most touchy-feely people that exist. And so it's kind of funny that I feel like there's so much trepidation about anybody being close to each other and like touching each other. Obviously, I think when there's intimacy scenes or scenes where people are being romantic or kissing or something, that they should have more of a discussion about it and potentially have an intimacy coordinator. And I think that it's good to like establish boundaries, and there's some people who don't like to be touched, and like when we're doing our stage bugs classes, we'll have the kids say every day like, these are my boundaries, I don't like being touched, or I don't care if you touch me or whatever, because kids are always like putting their germy hands on each other. But
you know what, because we have a safe word at stage bugs, so if somebody's uncomfortable, then they can say button, and then that tells the other person or us, if we're directing them in a scene, that they're not comfortable with that. So maybe colleges should just have a safe word, and then that way, if someone touches you in a scene and you're not comfortable with it, then you can say button, and then you won't get in trouble that you're breaking the scene. And but then it doesn't have to be so much like, oh, I can't touch anyone. We just have to stare at each other awkwardly, even though we're having a really dramatic scene right now or something.
Sorry. In some of my theater classes this semester, there'll literally be like, someone is supposed to just be like, oh, don't worry, it's okay, or something like that in a scene. And
if you couldn't see that, she was tapping my shoulder.
I was patting her shoulder, and they'll be like, oh, we're gonna not do that, or oh, just don't touch her, sit next to her, because we don't have an intimacy coordinator to work on that, or we'll wait until the intimacy coordinator comes to do that scene. And it's happened like a lot of times in one of my classes, because we're doing a show in the class, and they say it for every scene. And I understand it for certain things, but I also just think it's so funny because I don't feel like that's something where people should be uncomfortable, or you can just say, are you okay with this happening in this scene? Okay, let's do it.
And not that people shouldn't be uncomfortable, because if you are uncomfortable with that, that's totally fine. But I feel like
it's like the way they approach it, that they make it into such a big deal, when maybe a better way to go about it would be like, at the beginning of the semester, everyone in a theater class just has a conversation about what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with, and then you have a safe word or something, and then everyone's prepared to respect each other's boundaries. Because when theater people are just hanging out, they're always climbing on each other and kissing each other. And even in other classes and other sports and whatever, I feel like people are more touchy than they are in the theater classes.
Imagine if in football you had to ask people before you touch them. I know it's not the same. It's not the same. I'm really not making fun of it, but I was just thought that was funny. I think it's more, there should be more focus on just creating a safe space where people feel comfortable with each other and they feel safe saying if they're not okay with something, and then they know what the expectations are, because like in football you know that you're going to have to tackle people, so if you're not okay with that, then probably find a different sport. So if you know that you're not okay with somebody holding your hand, then you establish at the beginning of whatever you're working on that you're not okay with that, and then either you don't do a scene where you're holding someone's hand, or you off the bat figure out something else that you're going to do. That way you just are going into the scene knowing what the expectations are. But anyway, people probably don't care about that.
Yeah, they probably don't, but that's okay because no one listens besides us, so.
Yeah, but they should. Do you want to hear my sufferings? Because we said on the last episode that we had a lot to say about suffering, so I thought we should address that, but I have a couple really big things before we talk about that people need to not feel like they have to suffer all the time. I have to talk about how much I'm suffering.
Well, that's why I started with the misophonia thing, because we said we were going to talk about suffering, and that's my daily suffering.
So my suffering is that my life depends on my planner. Like, you know, the planner book that you write down everything you have going on.
Yeah, everybody knows what a planner is.
Well, I didn't know that these people were related in the 10 minutes of this podcast I was listening to.
Well, if you didn't know what a planner is, now you do.
Now you
You're
know.
welcome.
So my planner that I have right now has wire binding, and the wire is continually getting stuck in there's a pocket in my backpack that's within the bigger pocket that's for my laptop, and it's mesh, and the wire binding keeps getting stuck in the mesh, and it has completely unraveled, so every time I put my planner in my backpack it gets stuck, and I can't get it out during my classes because it's so stuck that it won't come out. And so I haven't been able to use my planner, and I've been keeping an email document, like an email draft in my email with everything that I have to do, and it is just not working for me, and I am just so disorganized and overwhelmed that I can't use my planner, and it's really stressing me out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But the good news is that it's November, and so there's only a month and a half until I will get a new planner, because it will be a new year, and so that is at the top of my Christmas list. 2 years ago I had a Happy Planner, which is just a brand of planner, but they have Disney ones and they're really cute. And so I think I want one of those because they have plastic binding and they come with stickers and cute stuff.
It's funny that you always get a planner for Christmas, because I always get one for my birthday.
I know, that is funny.
It's like a big thing for us to get planners, because we just love them and need them.
I think my other suffering that I've been going through this weekend, it's really bad. I am a college student, if you didn't know.
No way!
And part of being a college student means using public laundry facilities. And there is a laundry room in my apartment building. There's one, well, actually, there's two on each floor that I just discovered yesterday. But I thought there was only one. So last week, when I did my laundry, the dryer didn't work and all of my clothes were really wet. Laundry is expensive.
It is so expensive.
It's $1.50 to dry one load of laundry. So I was like, I'm not paying, I'm just gonna air dry it. So I air dried all of my clothes, which took forever, and so I had like 12 pairs of pants laying out on my bed for 3 days, which was very just uncleanly and disorganized. But I was like, it's fine, it's not the end of the world, it's just one time. So then I went to do my laundry yesterday morning, and I went to the laundry room, and 2 of the 3 washing machines, the doors had been completely ripped off of them. So then I put my laundry in the 3rd laundry machine after there was this whole thing because there was Tide Pods and fresh scent stuff in the laundry machine. So I was like, it's probably fine, but that's also weird that somebody else's soap is in there. So I called my mom and she wasn't answering. So then I was like, I'm just going to go down to the next floor. Went down to the next floor, found out that my key didn't work. It only worked in the laundry rooms on my floor. So then I came back up, and then I called my mom again, and I was like, I just really need her to answer because I just need to do my laundry. So finally, she answered and said it was probably fine. So put my laundry in, and then the credit card reader wasn't working. So that's why somebody left their soap in there, because they probably put their stuff in and then realized it wasn't working. So then I was like, I'm going to see if there's another laundry room. And my apartment building is big. Like, it was like 2,000 steps because I have my Fitbit watch to get around the whole square. So I lugged my laundry all the way around the building and finally found another laundry room. So I went in there and I put my clothes in the washer. And then I came to get them, and they were sopping wet to the point that I was wringing them out, putting them in the dryer. And I was like, this isn't going to be good. But I didn't know what else to do. So I just put them in the dryer, and I ran them through for 3 cycles, and they still weren't dry. But at that point, I've now paid $5 to dry my laundry. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to air dry them again because they were a little bit drier. They weren't wringing them out wet anymore. So I thought it might be more beneficial to just air dry them. So then I put them all in my hamper, and then this laundry room was all the way on the other side of where my room was, so it was really far away. And this is going to sound really dumb, but because all my clothes were still so wet, my hamper was so heavy, and I literally didn't know how I was going to get back to my room because I got like halfway there and I was having to stop every couple minutes, and because I just couldn't hold it anymore, because also the handles on my hamper are broken. So I was like carrying it by the wire, and the wire was breaking, and I just could not get it back. And I almost called Ashley, and I almost called you and asked you to come and help me carry it back because I literally was like, this is the stupidest thing ever, but I don't know how to get it back. I felt so hopeless. And then I ended up dragging it the rest of the way back, and I'm sure people who saw me thought I was insane that I couldn't carry my laundry hamper, but they were so wet that it was just insanely heavy. But then because my clothes were still so wet, they were like leaking water out of the bottom, so I had this huge water following me. I'm sure that wasn't the best way to go about it, and everyone who's listening to this is probably like, you idiot. But I really didn't know what to do, and so that has been my big suffering of the weekend, is that doing my laundry ended up being like a 9-hour endeavor, and it didn't even get dry, and I'm sure they aren't that clean either. So Ashley and I were talking about yesterday that we're going to live together after college. So when we get our apartment together, we have to have an apartment that has a washer and dryer in the unit.
That was a really exciting story about your laundry. Thank you for sharing.
I thought it was a good story.
Yeah, it was. It just put me to sleep a little bit.
Well, I was falling asleep earlier because I was, for the first time ever.
Oh boy, and I'm really short. I'm kidding.
For the first time ever, I was on time for recording today, but you weren't ready. And so then I was all energized, but then I was waiting for you for so long that I was falling asleep.
You were waiting for me for like 2 minutes.
No, once we got up here, and then you had to go put all your stuff away. And
I know, that only took 2 minutes.
It was like 2 plus 20.
Not even close.
Just kidding.
Aspen has no concept of time. Someone needs to teach her how to tell time.
Yeah.
Maybe you were confused because maybe you didn't set your watch back yesterday for daylight savings.
It automatically set back.
Maybe you thought it did and it didn't. I know that mine did because I was awake.
I was awake too.
And I saw it go back.
I was really confused because I thought it was 2:12, and then all of a sudden it was 1:12, and I was like, wait, it already was 1:12, and then I realized that it was daylight savings.
I already knew it was daylight savings.
Well, I knew too, but just like in the moment, because it's weird that it resets at 2 and not at midnight.
I know, that is weird.
Yeah.
But maybe because then it does impact the day.
Yeah.
Then I guess the next day is impacted. Today was 25 hours long. Then there's a day in the spring that's only 23 hours long.
Oh, the madness. Okay, but
like a million years ago, you said
part of being a college student is doing public laundry, and I just had to say something else that's part of being a college student that I did this week.
What'd you do?
Oh, I know what it is. You know what I did? I went to a party and I got drunk.
She did not get
Yes,
drunk.
I did.
She drank
Like a fifth of a White Claw, like probably 2 sips of it, and then somebody had a bottle of vodka, but we didn't have any shot glasses, so they were pouring it into people's mouths, and she said, "I'll have some," and then she opened her mouth and tilted her head back, and then they poured like a drop, and then she choked on it and spit it out.
No, I didn't. That's not what happened.
It's pretty close.
I drank 2 shots.
That's what happened.
Pretty much.
And I drank. Okay, but yeah, but I won't keep telling that story because the people that listen to this are either our friends who are going to think I'm really not cool or our family who are going to think I'm such a bad girl.
Yeah, I think they're going to think you're really bad.
But I'm almost 21, so it's actually was fine. But
she also deserved it because
I needed it after the show that we had. It was a cast party, and she was the director, and she went through literally everything that could go wrong with this show went wrong, and we'll probably do another episode where we talk about the stories, but we don't have time to talk about it in this episode. But I kind of forced her to do it because, I mean, not really forced her, and I didn't drink, but I encouraged her because I said, I think if there's ever a time for you to drink, it's right now. Yeah, because I was telling everyone during the show, I was like, I think I need a drink. Yeah, so I was at the cast party and I had my first college drink, which sounds kind of weird because I'm a senior, but I'm also a goody two shoes, so first time I did that. Don't tell my scholarship foundation. I think they're going to probably rescind it. Yeah. Except I know for a fact that there's other people at my school who have that scholarship and they have been drunk underage before, so. Also, you didn't get drunk. Yes, I did. Okay. I got a little bit drunk. There was like 15 minutes where I was like, whoa, I feel funny. Okay, that's all. I just thought people might want to know that update. But I have been high before, and if you want to know more about that, you should listen to our episode about when I accidentally got high. It was called A Message for the Future Generation. Oh, yeah, it was called that. So it sounds like it's going to be inspiring, which it might have been. It was inspiring. It was pretty inspiring. She was inspiring people why they shouldn't get high. She did it on accident. But then she had a good, actually very positive message about being a woman. And not judging people. Yeah, it was really cute. It was cute. Okay, but anyway, so you're going to tell us about your laundry again? Yeah. I'm going to make you suffer. On our last episode, we were talking about how we feel like there's such this pressure to never sleep, and then I had mentioned something about how I feel like people, including me, feel like we need to be. I also need to stop saying I feel like. But anyway, that's not. I say that. I say I feel like, and just way too much. Yeah, I do too. But nobody cares about that. My point was that I think that there is a lot of pressure that in order to deserve success, we have to have suffered, or not necessarily pressure, but it just feels like you have to. And you said that you had a lot to say about that. So I just thought we could circle back to that topic for a second. I said I had a lot to say about that. You did. I don't remember any of it. Oh. Which is funny because I probably have had it in my head for a long time, but it's been a long week, and I don't really have anything left in my head. Okay. Okay, tell us about suffering, Aspen. I feel this way, and I think other people feel this way. In one of my classes freshman year, we watched this stand-up comedy show. It was Hannah Gatsby's Douglas, and she was talking about this, and everyone in my class seemed to relate to it, so I feel like it's not just me. But it seems to me that I don't feel that I deserve success unless I suffered to get it. I don't want it to seem like if somebody goes through suffering that they don't deserve to share that, or that shouldn't be part of their story, because I absolutely think that it should. But I just feel like somehow there's become this narrative that if you And I don't think it's the people who have genuine suffering who are portraying this narrative. I think it's just like this societal expectation that we feel like we aren't worthy of success unless we had to have trauma to get there. And I just think that everyone goes through hard things, but it's like, oh, well, this wasn't that hard for me. I mean, let's just, for example, I feel really guilty if I get an A on a test and it was easy for me because then I feel like, well, I sound like a jerk if I say that I studied a lot for this test and I didn't feel like it was that hard because then I feel like I'm not worthy of it because somebody else got an A but they struggled and they didn't understand the material and it was a lot harder for them, so then my A isn't as valuable as their A because I didn't go through as much to get it. I guess I don't even know if that makes sense because if they did do more work than me, I don't know, do they deserve it more than I did? Or like college admissions. I felt like I wasn't going to get into a good school because I didn't have what I would call a sob story. And I don't mean a sob story in like a fake, oh, woe is me way. I just mean like nothing's terrible happened to me in my life. And therefore, I felt like I didn't have anything that people were going to care about. And I feel like that's a really bad mindset to have because I did a lot of things in my life leading up to college that I feel like made me worthy of getting into a good school. But when I was working on my college essays, and I feel like the way that just the questions are worded, it's always tell us about a challenge that you had to overcome, or tell us about the hardest time in your life, or in 35 words, describe the time you felt most hopeless, or just things where it's like, I think it's important to have resilience and be able to overcome things, but the way that it's worded, I feel like it just kind of sets up this expectation that unless the challenge that I overcame was some horrific thing, then it wasn't it wasn't as worthy as other people. I think then it sometimes puts me in a mindset where I'm trying to turn things into sources of suffering that aren't, and I just from my perspective think that that happens to a lot of other people too because I feel like I witness a lot people turning things into more than I think that they necessarily need to be. And I'm not saying that in every scenario that things are being exaggerated, but I think sometimes it's like, oh, well, my parents only fed me this kind of food, or that my parents didn't let me have Oreos, and so I'm traumatized. And sometimes your parents really did have a triggering eating environment, but maybe they were just doing the best that they could, and the latest trend was don't let your kids eat too much sugar, and they thought they were protecting your brain and they weren't trying to traumatize you. And I don't know, I feel like it leads to sometimes people hurting relationships with their friends or with their family or with people that they could be close to because there's kind of this pressure to interpret things as more than they really were. That was just a really long rant, and I think that made me sound really high and mighty and didn't make sense. So
No, I don't think so. I think it made sense. Did we talk about before the whole parenting thing and how like everyone always wants to blame things on their parents?
I don't know,
Okay.
but that's kind of what I was getting at.
I mean, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to try to not talk too much. I have a lot of thoughts on what you said, but I think that there are things where not necessarily that somebody deserves something more or their success is more valid, but if somebody had to overcome a lot to get where they are in comparison to somebody else who's in the same place, I think that in some ways they do deserve more, I don't know, I guess recognition for that because I mean like if you've seen that video where they have all the people and they are starting in the same place. I think it's supposed to be a race or something and they say like take a step forward if you had two parents, take a step forward if you knew where you were sleeping every night, take a step forward if you were not on free and reduced lunch, things like that. And then it was like look at how these people
have so much more of an advantage because they start 50 feet ahead of these other people just because of the circumstances that they were born into.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is kind of what college applications are getting at when they ask about challenges and stuff, but I also think that kind of does create this mindset of negativity in a sense of like everyone's trying to see the bad in their lives and think about what they've overcome instead of thinking about the positives in their life. And I think that there are plenty of people who have truly overcame really hard things in their lives, and I think everybody has had to overcome something in their lives, but there are also a lot of people who have a lot of privilege, and so I think that it does kind of make you feel like you aren't worthy because you haven't had a terrible traumatic childhood, but that should be something that you feel really lucky and grateful for instead of that you're kind of trying to like push that away and be like, oh, well, what was bad in my childhood? What can I use to make things look like they were harder than they were to make myself feel more worthy? And so I don't even know where I'm going with that, but I think that there are situations where, for example, if you were applying for college, let's just say, and you applied to Harvard and Johnny Joe Jacob applied to Harvard, and Johnny Joe grew up in a homeless shelter and he went to an inner city school that was really underfunded and had a 30% graduation rate, whereas you grew up in a middle class suburban home and went to a high school that had like a 98% graduation rate or something. And Johnny Joe Jacob had the same SAT scores as you did and had the same, not the same, but like on the same level of extracurriculars and things like that. If Harvard was deciding between the two of you, then I do think that Johnny Joe maybe deserves to go there more than you do because he had to work a lot harder to get to the same place that you're both in. But I also think that when you look at things like that, somebody who's in your situation then maybe starts to think that they're not also worthy of going to Harvard even though you are, so then they try to turn their past into something more negative than it is because they want to feel the same level of worthiness. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is if Harvard is deciding between Johnny Joe Jacob and me and we are at the same level, then yeah, I do think that Johnny Joe Jacob has done more to get to where he is, so he should be the one who gets in. But if Johnny Joe Jacob and I both get into Harvard, then I shouldn't feel like I didn't deserve to get in because I didn't have as hard of a upbringing as Johnny Joe Jacob. And if I don't get into Harvard, that also doesn't mean that I wasn't worthy of going there because 4% of people who or who apply to Harvard get accepted or something crazy like that. So even though Johnny Joe Jacob got in and I didn't, that doesn't mean that I suck.
Yeah. Or I think that when something like that happens, then people take that as, well, he only got in because he has this past and not because he deserved to go there just as much as you did.
Yeah, because it takes a lot of work to get a 4.0 no matter what where you're coming from.
But I think that also something that, I don't know, I feel a little bit uncomfortable saying this because I feel like people are gonna be offended or upset by it.
Okay, we're not saying these are facts. We're just
I know, but that's why I don't want to say it because it's not a fact. It's just my opinion. I feel like sometimes in our generation, there's kind of this tendency to put trauma and hardship and suffering on a pedestal, and I feel like, or kind of romanticize it in some ways. And I think that, I don't know, it's a hard thing because I think that there are a lot of people who truly do suffer, and I think that, I think everybody suffers in some way at some times, but I feel like people in our generation, and I don't know if this is the same thing in other generations, but I feel like I just notice it a lot in ours, and I don't know if it's because of social media or the internet or just like the access that we've had to seeing all of these things all the time, but
For example, I was listening to a podcast the other day about mental health, and they were saying that there's so many more people now saying that they have mental health issues or self-diagnosing with mental health issues, that they don't necessarily have an actual mental health disorder, but they might just be sad or be anxious because of things going on in their lives, but they don't have a clinical diagnosis of it. And it's kind of a hard line to walk, because I think that there seems to be kind of like you're part of the group if you have suffered or if you have faced oppression, and it kind of seems like it's something that people want to talk about. And I think it's good that mental health in these sorts of conversations are destigmatized a little bit, but even with like oppression and stuff, and I don't want to say too much about this because I have not faced a lot of oppression, so I don't want to, I mean, I don't believe that most people who talk about oppression and talk about these different movements haven't actually faced these things, but I think that there are times where we try to make it out to be that we've had more of a hard time than we actually have. And I think that it's kind of like a competition to see who has suffered the most and who has gone through the most, and you always want to have a platform and something that you're standing up against and fighting against. And I think that sometimes it gets to a point where it's like not even that it's something that you care about and something that's affected you, but it's like you just want to seem like a part of the group and seem like you fit in and that you have something to
offer.
Yeah. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I agree. And like you said, I think it's a really hard line to walk because a lot of people have faced a lot of oppression, and even like with mental health, I think that there is more prevalency of mental health disorders than there was 20 years ago because of social media and because of things like that. But I do think there is sometimes this kind of feeling that don't have a mental health disorder or I haven't faced oppression or been discriminated against, then I I can't relate to other people. I don't belong. So I need to like have these things too. And so I think it ends up with us kind of trying to, us as a society, trying to feel validated and feel worthy by not even making stuff up, but just like you said, like I'm anxious all the time, but I don't think that I have an anxiety disorder. I think I just have a stressful life. But when people are talking about their anxiety, I feel like I need to have anxiety too. But anyway, I hope that that was didn't sound like we were judging anybody.
I was going to say, I think that also it just kind of feels like maybe that people are afraid to not have a voice, and so they feel like they have to be able to say that like they have experienced something or they're part of this community so that they can feel like they have a voice in it. Or I mean, to be honest, like I am a white woman, and so I haven't experienced a lot of oppression, but I consider myself a feminist, but I also think that there are times where I'll kind of over exaggerate gender problems, you know, when I'm talking to other people, because I want to feel like I'm part of the movement and that I am valid in joining in these conversations, where I think there are definitely things that women experience and discrimination and a lot of issues that women face, but I think that a lot of these things have improved a lot. And I think that especially before I got to college, like I didn't really experience that much sexism. Yeah, and so I think that sometimes I would just talk about it and try to make things out to be like, oh well, that person must have been being sexist or saying this because I'm a woman, where I didn't actually believe that at first, but I would just kind of say that because I wanted to feel like I was part of the fight, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have done that before, and I guess that's what I was trying to get at with the like not judging people, because then I feel like when I like what you say matters, and if I say, oh, my teacher was being sexist because XYZ, when I didn't necessarily think that they were being sexist. I might have thought they weren't treating me fairly, but I don't necessarily think it was because I was a girl. I think it was for a myriad of other reasons, but then that's not fair to them because they maybe weren't actually deliberately being discriminatory against me. And I think that we've just become so quick to jump down people's throats and accuse people of things. And for the most part, I think most people are doing things with good intentions, and it might not, nobody's going to be perfect and nobody's going to always say the right thing or do the right thing. And so I think that at least if we just all try a little bit harder to give people the benefit of the doubt and assume that people have good intentions, then I think that it might actually help things improve in our society because people won't be so afraid to say anything, or they won't feel so, I don't know, I don't want to say like excluded, but they won't feel like they can't get on board with something because they don't understand it. And I also just think that it'll make people happier and make everyone get along better if everybody just tries to not judge each other so much. Each other more.
Yeah.
Well, I love you, and I
don't love you. I judge you.
Yeah, you do. I love all of our listeners, and
That's because they're all our family.
I hope that there will be more. What I want for Christmas, since we're getting into Christmas time, is to have 100 subscribers, which isn't very many. So
Yeah. So subscribe to our
Yeah.
podcast and send it to your friends and tell them to subscribe. And also follow us on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. One of our YouTube videos went sort of viral the other day.
It's sort of viral.
Sort of viral.
It got like 4,000 views.
It's more than any of our other ones.
But also, we very much want to hear other people's perspectives because, like I said, we are just sharing our thoughts. So if you don't agree with us, please don't get mad at us and cancel us. Just tell us your thoughts and your perspective. We would love to hear it, and we are very open to hearing what you have to say. Yeah, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.